What's in it? The purl 3 together through the back loop double decrease. English style.
For this tutorial, you will need a pair of knitting needles and a ball of yarn. Special thanks to our sponsor Webs for providing today's yarn. Today we are using their Northampton yarn from their Valley Yarns line in the color Dahlia.
The purl 3 together through the back loop decrease is a double decrease. It removes 2 stitches at once, and it creates a really sharp increase that is kind of pulled into the center of your work. Now the difference between this technique and another, like just a purl 3 together, is that we are twisting the stitch, and we can see this by these 2 stitches here, which is a little bit difficult to see the detail, but here we can see that the stitch is actually twisted around, and that's from purling the stitch through the back loop. Now purling 2 of them together, or 3 of them together, is actually what creates the double decrease. And you would use this basically in a pattern that called for it. You know, there would be a reason why you wanted the stitch to be twisted in that particular pattern. Otherwise you're just going to have kind of a little bit more defined bump on the decrease stitch here. So, and you can't really see it from the purl side other than there's these bars right here. So let's show you how we do this. I'm going to purl to the stitch before the center of the stitch that I want to be decreasing. So in this case we are dealing with a stitch that would be right here in our pattern, so we can see the center. So if this is our center, we're going to purl to this stitch right here. So this would be step 1. Now for step 2, this is probably the hardest part of the stitch, because we need to come behind the work here and enter into the stitch on the right side of our pattern, starting with the 3rd stitch and then coming through all 3 stitches. So we're going to enter in here and go through all 3. Now this is going to be very tight and can be difficult depending on how tight you knit. So I'm just kind of maneuvering my needle through all of these stitches here, and then I'm going to bring the needle back around to the front. And see, you can see I only have my point through right here. This is because this is so tight, it's a little bit hard to get the entire needle through. I've moved the stitch up towards the tip of my needle to give a little bit more slack. And now for step 3, I'm going to purl all 3 of those stitches as if they were one stitch. And I'm putting pressure on my needle against my working needle, from my working needle against my main needle, sorry, and then letting that drag the yarn through all 3 stitches at once. Then for step 4, we'll remove all 3 stitches. So let's do that one more time for you. If you've done a purl 2 together through the back loop, or even a purl through the back loop, the concept is exactly the same. We're just going through the 3rd stitch here on our work. Now we don't have to turn our work around on our main needle in order to get into that stitch. I think it just makes it easier to see what's going on. But you can technically get through all stitches without turning it around. You may just find it easier to do so and see what's happening. So here we want to make sure that our needles are going the same direction, essentially. And I'm going through all of those stitches there. Make sure you don't lose the stitches off your needle like I'm about to. And we will purl them all together. So this is not a particularly easy technique to perform, and it may take some practice, but it is possible to do. So that's how we purl 3 together through the back loop.
Want more New Stitch a Day? Check out our website at newstitchaday.com.